Okay. We are live. Excuse me. Gonna just grab the attendee list here. Thank you, folks. Jeff, we got the right time. I see you already here. So excited to have you folks join us for our Connected Fundraising Community discussion. I'm going to let folks kind of file in. We are also live streaming this to YouTube as we speak. There might be a bit of a delay there, but that's just mainly for the recording for people who cannot make it live. For the people who make it live, I'm paying attention to you. I don't care about YouTube comments. I care about folks who have registered. So I want to thank Christy, Aaron, Jeff, Meg, and the rest of you who have joined us today live for our unpacking of the Giving USA 2022 report. We're going to get started in probably 2 minutes formally. What I'm going to go ahead and do is share my screen. I have an infographic that I'm going to pull up here and we can get into. For the specifics, they have given me a, you might see this down here. This is a comprehensive PowerPoint slide. I may save you from that. We can pull it out if we want to, but I think we're going to get a lot in a half an hour just from this one infographic. So I'll kind of get going on this, the how that's going to work for today, but I want to go ahead and make sure that I can see both the chat and the questions. Why don't we test out the chat if you want to have a conversation? There's a webinar chat. Why don't you put in who you are? No, yeah, there's the numbers going up. Who you are and where I'm talking to you from in the world today, if you want to test out the chat. We got Barb from Michigan, Jeff from Orlando. Jeff, I should have waved at you. I was actually just down there for Planet Philanthropy. We also, I'll be taking questions as well. We got Jada from the Milk Bank. We got Anna from our team over in Knoxville. We got Meg. William Henry from Poughkeepsie. Hello, William. From Newburgh originally. Oh, Kristen. Hello, Kristen. Kristen, we're going to be getting that workshop set up soon. I'm going to be reaching out about that, going to the Blake Annex to probably talk with that. So really happy that you folks have joined us. What I'm going to do today is the Giving USA report has been released. I'm going to go over what exactly that is and why you should care. And we got people from Chicago, we got people from Tennessee, we got people from Michigan, Orlando. Giving USA covers all the different missions, all the different things. If you're in higher ed, that's great. If you're in healthcare, that's great. If you are in human services, that's great, because this is us. So what we're going to do is for our community discussions, I'm paying attention to the chat and the Q&A. You are the only folks that I care about in terms of what questions you're asking. If something comes in from the internet, on YouTube, I don't care. I'm here for you. So over the next 28 minutes or so, we're going to unpack this year's report, and this is a big one. So I'm going to start with what exactly is the Giving USA report. Now, I have one infographic that I've popped into here. If you are not a member of the Connected Fundraising Community, fear not, you're going to get a follow-up email, and it's going to tell you how to get in there, because I'm going to be posting some supporting resources, including this infographic and some other chapters directly from the Giving USA report in our Slack community. It's a benefit for joining. It doesn't cost you anything. And I don't care if you're using Neon One Tech, come and join the conversation. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is unpacking this report. Now, the Giving USA report is put out by the Giving USA Foundation. And Giving USA Foundation is generally an entity that came together between vendors, consultants, and academic institutions. The data itself that we're seeing here is analyzed by the Lilly School of Philanthropy and a larger data team. And so this is something that you can trust. And it's the largest analysis of giving, regardless of its individual giving, foundation, corporate giving. It's everything that happens philanthropically in the United States that we can see and have insight into what nonprofits are doing. So let's break it down. What's different about this year versus previous years? Well, the biggest thing coming out of it is that the number went down. When you start adjusting for inflation, we kind of saw a bit of a dip compared to previous years. Now, the report has been unpacking things from also a multi-year standpoint. And when you start to look at historical data, which I will make sure is put into the Slack channel for you to be able to have access to the charts, resources, things like that. I can't outright give you the report, but I can give you a bunch of stuff from it because I don't even have the report yet. What they've done is given us things like this. So that's what we're going to kind of dive into. Now, I'm paying attention to questions. So if there's anything that you want to know, if I can answer it with confidence, I'm going to give you that insight. I've attended the early briefings. I've read the chapters. So a lot of this can seem like staring at a number like $319 billion. What am I supposed to do with that in Poughkeepsie or Orlando or whatever? Like, what does that have to do with me? And so that's what I actually want to make sure is an outcome of our time together today is what do these larger, big numbers mean for everybody on this call? So if you have specific questions, please let me know. So I'm going to break this down. I do have a larger deck as well that we can kind of get into if that's appropriate. But I think this will be enough for today. The deck is overwhelming, if I'm going to be honest. So let's get into it. So 64% of the overall number, which is $499 billion. And that was a decline. That was a decline compared to last year. But that's still a lot of money. That's $500 billion that gets donated to charities in some form on a yearly basis. That's like pretty consistent. Now, what this does not include is things like program fees. So tuition, theater tickets, arts and culture. That's a bit of an outlier. Sometimes that's not picked up here, but that's part of generosity. That's people giving and saying, I care about this. They're just showing it in a way that the IRS doesn't necessarily go, that's a donation, because it's not. It's a ticket. So this is really kind of focusing in on when somebody is doing either an individual gift, a foundation gift, a bequest, or a corporate social responsibility item. So individual giving declined. And this actually, we had anticipated this because of the fundraising effectiveness project data that came out earlier this year. Now, Neon One is a leading member of the fundraising effectiveness project. So we started to coordinate alignment with Giving USA. In fact, Josh Burkholz, who is the chair of Giving Institute right now, which supports a lot of these initiatives, he came to our meeting in October in Washington, D.C., and started to kind of create a closer bridge between these larger data initiatives, because that's what we have to do. And this is the stuff that's happening behind the scenes that helps you folks, because better understanding and coordination of large research helps you. Now, while giving by individuals continues to grow over time, it's fallen below 70% of all giving for the fourth consecutive year. And we have to adjust for inflation, and inflation is still holding strong. So the last time we saw this much of a dip in individual giving was 2008. But the number did go back up. So I'm still optimistic. Now, we're going to get into the missions because a bunch of you listed a bunch of different stuff that you do. And depending on the type of nonprofit, you may see different results as well. Now, the most interesting one, in my opinion, is foundation giving. Some community members even cited, I had to go, work on a grant, or I'm working with the government on something relating to that. And a lot of this can fall into private, public, community grant making. Foundation giving continues to grow and continues to also have a reevaluation on how these gifts are being actually distributed. There's more and more meaningful conversations about unrestricted giving, general operation giving, investment into infrastructure. I think that you're going to hear the phrase maturity model a lot more, folks. And that's just a fancy way of saying, do we have our act together? And foundations are going to be paying attention to this a little bit more. So interesting stuff when it comes to the foundation world. Now, bequests, this is always an interesting one that Giving USA actually sets this off to the side. And so bequests are your legacy gifts. And that typically falls into the individual giving bucket, but they break it out. And that's because it's a different type of a conversation. There is a massive wealth transfer that we are in the midst of. A lot of older generations, especially the greatest generation, as they start to transfer their wealth to the so-called boomer generation, Generation X, etc. There's a lot of focus on what is happening generationally. Bequests continue to be a strong opportunity. The thing that I want to impress upon everybody in this call is bequests doesn't mean rich people. A bequest does not automatically mean really big gift. Anybody can give a bequest. Anybody can leave something in their will for you. So within the individual giving bucket, if we go back up to that, we've started seeing more recurring gifts have seen a resurgence and strengthening through the pandemic, especially. There's some data that's come in through Classy, for instance, that they've started researching digital giving. Now, digital giving is still not the majority of how people give. Individuals, foundations, bequests, corporations, they're still writing checks. They're still doing check. They're literally taking a checkbook out, or they're using their procurement system to send something off. Now, corporate giving. Let's talk a bit about that. And I'm paying attention to questions. If there's any questions, folks, here, I don't want to just lecture you. I want to interact with you. But I probably have about, maybe 5 more minutes going over this infograph, and then we can kind of see where we go. Corporate giving, I always roll my eyes at this one. I don't care if it went up or down each year, personally. I think this is distracting. Personally, because it is as often down as it is up, and it's very fair weather. And this is a lot of times marketing investment as opposed to matching gifts. There's a lot of money left on the table for matching gifts that I think nonprofits can take advantage of. But if this is a strategy that you're trying to get the big corporation to underwrite your general operational support, don't do that, because it's not working. And it's not reliable either. But matching gifts are still solid here. I just think that corporate giving overall, it's the smallest piece of the pie, as you can see here. Literally. This is where it's at. Individual giving and foundations. Bequests as a way to supplement your strategy. And this is generally how you might want your revenue table to look like. Am I mainly getting it from individuals, and then we are supplementing big projects, big swings, big efforts with a really targeted grant? That's a lot of the approach that when I'm working with nonprofits, we kind of zero in on that. So how much money of foundation and corporate giving falls under foundation? They try to do that's. I would say that foundation giving is pretty well set in that's private foundations like Bill and Melinda Gates, which is so different from Microsoft's investments at this point that it's kind of its own thing. Same with the Knight Foundation, the Ford Foundation. That's typically pretty well insulated on that one. So I don't think that they're getting mucked up too much. I'm happy that somebody talked about donor advised funds, Jeff. Falls, and it's always an argument on this one. I think that a lot of individual giving falls into, or donor advised fund giving falls into that individual giving bucket. And I actually just came from a meeting at the Washington, D.C. for the National Council of Nonprofits, and DAFs are a very, very heavily discussed topic, especially because there might be some legislation that is impacting that. So donor advised funds continue to be a hot topic. What's interesting is that there is some digitization happening when it comes to donor advised funds for individuals to streamline their DAF giving. It's been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming, but hopefully those investments will lead to greater capabilities, especially if there is pressure to disperse money beyond the 5% that they are legally required to. I was a research assistant for this report. So excited to see the full report, especially about DAFs. Awesome. Jada, that's so cool. DAF giving is under foundations. I had to double check. Jada, if you are in there, if you can like maybe clarify, because you might know this more than me. I want to say with accuracy where DAFs are falling. I had to go back and double check, but somebody who is a research assistant might be able to tag in. Otherwise, I will go back and double check. I'm generally sure. Well, now Kim, you got in my head. So I'm going to actually come back to that one. But there is a dedicated chapter of DAFs. So I think like a community discussion just on DAFs, let me know if that would be of interest. Put it into the chat. So let's break down the actual percentage of contributions. Religion continues to be a very, very hot topic and a very, very important area of where U.S. citizens decide to make their contributions. So religion is continuing to be strong and also has seen a little bit of growth there. Human services, while technically it's a down number, it's because there was a 2-year resurgence and focus on this type of giving. So just because you see a number go down here, one, keep in mind things like inflation that is affecting a lot of this year in particular. Number two is also the fact that some of these numbers really went up. Environmental, arts, human services. If we look at the early stages of the pandemic, they actually outperformed a lot of these things. The big winner this year is international affairs. Highest year-over-year increase. Now, this is because we saw a bit of a down year in previous years for that, but the war in Ukraine definitely has had an impact on this because this is giving within the United States to XYZ. So this isn't people in Ukraine or Europe or even Canada. Giving USA is focused on Giving USA. So this is how the United States citizens give. Arts and culture continues to see some strength there. I think that especially we have to expand our understanding that in the arts and culture space, in particular, that the way that they show, and this is kind of a general takeaway because this is the graphic itself. I can get into some of the specifics, but when you get down to it, this is kind of the too long didn't read of a lot of the different stuff. And we can get into some of the other charts if we're interested. But when you get down to it, there's kind of two things that I want to call out here. For entities and organizations that have had to rely more on individual giving, grants, and kind of that transactional relationship with donors, however strong that they may be, we're starting to see that even the high net worth individuals at the top level of the giving side of things, where they're giving large amounts, they might be writing that 5,000 plus gift, could be 50,000, could be $1 million, depending on the organization. Those folks are getting tired. And so development of an overall revenue stream that brings back a little bit more momentum from especially mid-level gift sizes. People who they might have a relationship with your staff, they might like what you do, but they're not in love with what you do. Overall, this is a year for us to step back and ask, how can we build trust with the sector into other individuals who are not paying attention as deeply as we are? Because the vast majority of people aren't paying attention to the fact that this report even came out. They don't care. If you look at other Lilly School data, a lot of folks don't even know what charities do, what nonprofits do. They don't realize that they're benefiting from the library and the healthcare and the other types of social services, or they're making a they're not making that distinction between I'm buying a theater ticket and I'm supporting something, because they're both doing all of that. People, they're not bucketing these things in the ways that we do. They just want to know that their money is making an impact. So for your organizations, especially if you are in an area that saw a bit of a down year overall, or you're seeing a down year, it's getting back to basics. It's getting back to that core story that you should be telling. On the opposite side is organizations and entities that are very reliant on maybe service things. So like, let's take our theaters, let's take our colleges, tuition, etc. It's a weird time. There's a lot of unknowns there. So going back and just even developing a base culture of philanthropy, building that community of generosity around things that are not just programmatic, that are developing that buy-in into we are a worthy thing that is worthy of your dollars because it is doing very special stuff in our community. So theaters need to redefine how they think effectiveness are. Ballets, a lot of cultural institutions stepping back and going, okay, how can we not just focus in on the transactional side of somebody buying a theater ticket, but actually going beyond that and identifying with that and going, this is somebody who might go above and beyond as a patron. Same with universities. It's beyond tuition. It's beyond a transactional. And that's hard to do when a lot of your revenue is tied up into that exchange. So where it's going to get really interesting is also there's probably going to be a higher focus in the coming years on collaboration. A lot of community foundations in particular, they want to see how nonprofits are working together. If you're a smaller organization, who also can you collaborate with? St. Louis has shown this with some of their initiatives that came out of George Floyd. We did a webinar on this last year with the community foundation there. Really, really interesting stuff. But we're going to see more and more nonprofits be asked to collaborate or even merge with each other. I think that's what's going to come out of this larger macroeconomic environment, is that we're going to see a bit of a consolidation of different causes. I think it's difficult to analyze some giving, such as workforce development, increased giving for us, but it's hard to see within these categories. Yes, and that's a really big flag here that Kim is pointing out here, is that, like, what the heck is human services in this? That covers like so many different things. I know all the different stuff that Kim's organization does. I know all the different stuff that Kristen's organization does. They're very different, but they're still flagged under human services. So deeper nuances are needed here. This is where the tighter collaboration is going to be important between data vendors like us and research institutions like Lilly School. But we're getting there. So what else? What else? Because this is a meaty report. Donor advised funds, that's one in particular that's going to get some love there. I think that we're going to continue to see a lot more discussion on those types of things. Let me go ahead and maybe even grab. Let's see if there's anything of interest in this. We'll go through the report itself in the final few minutes, so you can kind of see all the effort that goes into this. So maybe let's kind of drill in. I'm going to do a little bit of a quick thing here, because you could kind of see. Here we go. Total giving. Notice goes up, little bit of a dip, but not catastrophic. I don't want us to lose hope here. That's the big thing, is that there's a lot of opportunity to stand out. But that individual giving, look at that drop. And the last time that dropped was around 2008. But look at what happened after 2008. It came back up, and then it came back strong. So I think that we could see that again. Okay, let's kind of pop in. Gross domestic product. A lot of times you talk about giving as a percentage of gross domestic product. I personally hate that as a identifier of effectiveness. I don't think it's the most effective way to think about it, because basically this doesn't change. It's been pretty much 2% or below for a long time now. So I think we need to reevaluate what overall effectiveness is. But look, this data goes back to 1982. This is deep analysis here. A lot of math stuff. They like to look at that total charitable giving indexed against the S&P 500. So as you could see, generally keeping alongside, there's a direct correlation between the stock market and especially high net worth philanthropy. So if you're wondering about where those big gifts are, take a look at the stock market. You're probably going to have the beginning of your answer there. Individual giving as shared disposable income, holding strong. This also, like, there's a lot of data that shows that it's not just rich people that give. University of Michigan has a very deep set of data on this for household giving. Everybody gives. Everybody gives. It's just showing the value of that. Corporate pre-tax profits, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Giving to religion. Current dollars versus inflation. Notice inflation, just as an overall takeaway. I am not an economist by any means, but you have to get a bit of a sense of what's going on economically to understand if your donors are going to be ready to give. You kind of have to step back and go, okay, what's happening here? So that's just a little bit of what I wanted to share today. We have a few minutes to kind of answer some general questions. But Giving USA, it's a big report. I'm going to make sure that we share a few of the resources that they've graciously provided us into our Slack community. It's just a weird year. It's just a weird year. I think that we have to pay attention to what's not just happened before, but where we're going. And if we start to make some important changes and shift toward focusing on people and not the money side of things by developing and redeveloping that trust with folks, that the individual giving especially can, I think, be the one that's going to see the rapid turnaround. I think that within 2 years, if things go right, we can see an upswing again, very similar to what we saw after 2008. That is my hope. I could be naive, though. What other questions? We had some good conversation. We're going to follow up definitely on donor advised fund items. Next month's community conversation is, okay, just a comment, in my experience, most ultra high net worth individuals drop their purse strings much quicker than middle and working class folks. Yes. Data backs that up, Elizabeth, too. They love you until they don't. Is it possible to go back to the first slide for a moment? Sure. Yeah, I'll pull up. I'm assuming you mean the infograph, which I am going to place into the Slack. That's definitely, I can share that. Let me go ahead, share my screen, and that's this one. So I'll pop this in. This we can share into the Slack community. I'll put it into the Connected Fundraisers chat. But there's also some supporting research. We have seen an uptick in high net worth donating assets rather than cash. Yeah, that's an interesting one. The slides and items will be in Slack, so please join our community there. You'll get an email follow-up with that. We also will be, we've recorded this on YouTube, so people can check that out. Giving USA is pretty, like, they have some pretty stringent rules about how to distribute this type of stuff, so we're going to keep that in Slack. But generally, we're really happy to provide this type of insight and service. The report literally just came out, like, I wasn't allowed to even show this type of stuff until 8 a.m. this morning. So this is a really important report, but a lot of it, the lesson is we got to reevaluate how we're doing all this. Okay, any final questions for today? I want to thank you folks for joining me for this. Again, it's just kind of a quick hit. Ask some questions, the international ones. Will you share an invite to the Slack? You got it. 1 second. I can grab that. And invite people. Here you go. What's the one thing you should tell your boss, and what's the top of the mind shift that you can make? You should tell your boss that every dollar spent needs to really be kind of zeroed in on where it's going for its effectiveness. That like cost per dollar raised is going to be a very important metric, which means that reviewing programmatic investments and its overall goals and objectives is important. If you are very events heavy for driving that, people will be fickle. They will be more transactional. They will start to question, is this the best philanthropic event that I can go to? Versus if you are shifting toward developing an identity-based focus for your fundraising planning to get people to look in the mirror and go, I'm in love with this nonprofit because this is what I personally care about. That's the best tactical shift. It's about focusing on people, not the money itself, because the money side, everybody's going to start to constrict and focus solely on the transactional optimization. You can stand out by stepping back and going, no, I'm going to treat people not as ATMs. It's unfortunate, but a lot of the trust is broken because people feel that they keep getting asked. Like, okay, here's one final tactical thing. If you have an email scheduled for the end of your fiscal year on June 30th, and that email says, we are not at our goal for our fiscal year, your donors don't give a crap. Don't tell people about your own operational inefficiencies as the reason why they should give. They don't care. And that's unfortunately what we keep seeing. Okay. We will follow up with an email with these resources. I do want to thank all of you for popping in today. Next month, it's a big one. We got a 2-day event that we'll be publishing the landing page for by next week. It's Dream Big. It's the community's event. We got a fantastic workshop that we're going to be doing over 2 days on the 19th of 20th of July. So that will be our community call. And I'm so thankful for all of you who joined us today. And this is a big report. I'm going to share by the end of the day these resources into the community Slack. And I want to thank you again for joining us. And we got this. We'll be able to get some change happening, I think. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.